I started the Real Mental podcast because it bugs me when film and TV miss the mark about how mental health gets portrayed. Real Mental is a podcast where a film-loving psychiatrist, that's me, talks to directors, writers, actors, and critics to help people figure out their life by getting to the truth about mental health in the movies. Welcome, Russell Brown, to the Real Mental podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Hi.
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk to you about your new film, Loren Rose, because I just thought it was very, very interesting. And I'm dying to pick your brain about what you were thinking when you decided to make a film like this with an older woman protagonist and a younger man, because it's not your typical pairing, right? So What made you decide to make a film about two creative people with such a different age gap?
Well, really how it started was I've kind of had this relationship many times in my life, and not necessarily always with women, but with mentors and older people, and yes, some women, some men who've been kind of my teachers and, you know, supporters and people who believed in me. So the idea was really, I'd never seen a film that I thought captured that relationship in all of its complexity and I guess all of its beauty and meaning and everything. So that was really the jumping off point. And then the character of Rose, you know, she sort of arrived fully formed. I didn't plan her in a way, like it just sort of started being written and I kind of followed it.
She's a very interesting character. And, you know, with Jacqueline Bisset, I just loved her portrayal because she's not an over-the-top actress. She's more subtle. And I guess she's more old school because she was, 78 when she was filming this with you?
I think so, something like that, yeah.
So she was really lovely because she conveyed everything without having to be, you know, acting, as they say, right? She just was very naturalistic and it brought a lot of psychological realism to the movie, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, you know, just picking up on one of the things you said, you know, as a director, you know, one of my jobs on this movie was actually trying to get Jacqueline to be a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? Not huge, but a little more fun and free. And, you know, I don't think that's her go-to in a way as an actor. So sometimes I thought she needed to be a little bit more crazy for this character. So I encouraged her to do that. But I think, you know, for the stuff that's very important in the film, especially that third act, that's really her wheelhouse. You know what I mean? That kind of intimacy. She is a real feminine screen presence, you know, femininity. She really relies on that kind of thing. So, you know, all of that was really operative in the third part of the movie, I think.
For sure. Well, when I'm thinking about the movie, I'm thinking, you know, it has a message about, well, a few things, at least to me, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong or if you had these intentions. But it's, first of all, don't discount older people because they have wisdom and experience. Even I love the waiter played by Paul Sand. I've always liked him as an actor, and I've always felt sad that he was underused, I felt, in his career. And I just think he's marvelous. And I was so thrilled to see him. He was in his 90s when he was filming this, right? 91 or something. Like, he's very old.
Pretty old.
Yeah. So I just loved how I think the message is don't discount older people, right? Don't dismiss them because they have something important to say. And if you're open and willing to listen, you could really benefit from their years of experience. I thought that was a very important message.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is how I feel. You know what I mean? And I've always actually really respected and had a great, you know, reverence for people, older people, and what they can teach and the lives that they've lived. I mean, even on this movie, you know, I was replaying that relationship again with Jacqueline, you know, like working with her as an actress when she would have an idea or a perspective or something, you know, it comes with a little extra level of gravitas because it's her and she's been doing it a long time and she knows what works for her. So I always, you know, listened. And I think a bigger theme of the movie is really just listening, you know, and listening to other people and really listening. You know, I don't know if listening as an art is so much in vogue right now.
No, and it's so interesting because I just actually wrote a little blog about it for my recent newsletter about how important it is for us to listen to one another and how people don't listen. They don't listen to themselves and their inner wisdom. They don't listen to each other. They just kind of make assumptions and jump to conclusions. So you're absolutely right. This idea of just being with another person and opening your mind and opening your heart and allowing what they have to offer to come to you, I think is so wonderful and so important right now in these crazy times, right?
Yeah, and I think Rose listens to Loren a lot too.
Yes.
I think it's not a one-way street in this movie. I think she's taking him in too and hearing what he's about. And so, yeah, that I hope that's one of the themes of the movie that comes through is, how important it is to when you're with people to kind of pay attention.
Yeah, to let them in.
Yeah.
The other theme I thought that was so important was this kind of interesting parenting dynamic that existed between Loren and Rose. Loren is a young man, Rose is an older woman. She could have easily been his grandmother, if not his mother. But it was interesting because for her, her own relationship with her adult daughter was very strained and they were never close. And it was a real source of pain to her. And yet she was able to have an intimacy with Loren and have a parental relationship with him where he appreciated her. And even though they might butt heads and argue, there was a real respect and a real affection. And I think it was good for both of them because he got a parent figure that he needed, and she got a child figure that she needed, but they did it through art, right? They found some common ground through their art, their artistry, their creativity. And through that, they were able to have this wonderful, very much parent-child interaction, I thought, with a lot of intimacy and a lot of real love.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times the ways in which we connect with our parents are very different than the ways you connect with your mentors. Certainly, my father and I just, I don't know how much we have in common really in our life interests, but I certainly love and respect and connect with him on a lot of ways. But I wouldn't say that we're sitting around having conversations like Loren and Rose talk about, So I think like a lot of times your mentors are really more your parents in a different way than your parents or your parents.
Yeah, absolutely. They're your parents for the things that you're passionate about. And like you say, you can have not much in common with a parent, even though you love them. But the things that your mentors have in common with you are the things that are most important to you.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. I particularly liked the dynamic when Loren was feeling despair about his career and Rose was encouraging him not to give up, not to lose faith, not to lose hope. And it was an easier message to hear from someone older because she had that wisdom of experience and she could say, it's okay, you can hang in there. I've been there, I've been through it. I've seen how a career can go. Don't give up now. And I felt like it was an important message for someone who's older and wiser to give to someone who's younger and doesn't know how things can go.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of Jacqueline's favorite parts of the movie. She always talks about, when she tells Loren, be proud, stand in your strength, stand in your essence, be an artist. I've let so much get in the way, you don't have to. That was, I think, one of her favorite parts of doing the movie. She loves that bit. Yeah, and I think, the arts are a very up and down type of career, for most people. And I think a lot of times your mentors are the ones that try and sort of keep you on track. They remind you of what your original values were. I think that's what he's doing for him.
Yeah. I also think that your mentors are the people who keep you from falling into despair because, as you say, it can be really hard to be an artist. It can be lonely and challenging, and there's a lot of rejection and disappointment. And so if you have someone who believes in you and who's sort of like your cheerleader, it can really lift you up in those difficult times and help you keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Because they see the best, they see your essence, they see the best part of you, and they're there to kind of like nurture the sort of best part of you, I think.
And now let's pause for a quick word about my other podcast. I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. We all need to be inspired and uplifted these days. We need a good laugh and we need to be moved. In the Ruthless Compassion podcast, I speak with a wonderfully diverse group of people. They've overcome daunting obstacles and they're making unique, exciting contributions to our communities and to our world. The Ruthless Compassion podcast has created more than 175 episodes over the past several years. Why not have a listen to it today? Did you have an autobiographical connection to this particular story?
Not, it's not like a one-on-one connection. It's not like this was Rose and she was this actress who I had this friendship with. So it's not like that. Rose is really a mixture of a lot of people, and Loren is kind of a mixture of a lot of people too. So I don't really see myself as him necessarily either. In fact, I always see myself as more like Rose in my worldview and in my personality. And she was much easier for me to write. Like I could sort of write Rose forever because she's very vivid in my imagination. Yeah, so there's not really like, it's not autobiographical in that way, but it's autobiographical in that this is all my thoughts, in a lot of ways.
There was a lot of psychological truth to this movie. How important is it for you to bring psychological realism to your films?
I mean, that's the most important thing to me, like that kind of truth. And I think getting at the meaning of life, is what I'm trying to do or attempting to do with varying levels of success. I mean, that's why I do it. That's why I enjoy getting into and thinking about.
What do you think films, especially films that have those kinds of psychological truth, what do they have to offer, the viewers, the audience? Like, what do they do for us when we're watching those kinds of things?
I mean, it's a lot of things. I have to think about it more deeply, I guess, to come up with a great answer. But, movies, I think the best movies really make you feel sort of connected, like you see yourself in the experience, and it gives, some kind of clarity and understanding of your own life through the experiences of characters. I mean, I guess this would get a lot into kind of like drama theories. But, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just this idea that other people have gone through what I've gone through, and here's how they dealt with it. And that feeling is very comforting and also very emotional.
Yeah. And I think the converse is also really important to mention, which is that when you watch a film and you sense that the psychology is not quite right, it's very jarring. And it can be confusing because the film is telling you something which you intuitively know is not correct. And it's giving you maybe even some advice, which you wouldn't want to follow, or it's having people do things which that they wouldn't do. And then it makes you very confused and you wonder, am I wrong in the way I'm thinking? So I think that's also important to notice.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way a lot when I watch a lot of movies. Whoever made this movie is not in the same world I'm in, or is not seeing the world in a similar overview that I'm seeing, things.
And it can be alienating, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It's just, I really have this belief in like tribes, like people sort of find their tribe. And I think it's the same thing with like movies. I think that's why like the like best picture thing is so important to people, is because they associate themselves with like this one type of worldview that is represented in one kind of movie. So it ends up not even being about the movie. It ends up being like, is my worldview better than your worldview? So I think that's how people kind of divide up themselves with movies a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, as a psychiatrist, it's, so important to me when psychological ideas are being shared that they're done in a more realistic and authentic way, because I get concerned about people watching movies and they have people doing things that are so not possible, people having like these huge changes of heart without any reason for it, right?
Yeah.
Just because it fits the third act. And then they start expecting other people in real life to be this way as well, which is not going to happen. So it affects our expectations of one another, and it affects our expectations of how the world will go. So when you make a film like Loren Rose, which is just a film about people being real and kind, it's reassuring to me because, I see that, okay, we can go to the movies and we can see people behaving in ways that make sense.
Yeah, you're sort of touching on this thing that I think is sort of interesting about being a writer-director as opposed to just being a director, which is, I'm very tuned into what my character would do or not do, or say or not say. And sometimes when an actor, is kind of proposes something, I know that character wouldn't do that. Here's the reasons why they just would not do that. And then if an idea comes up, I'm like, yeah, the character would say that. Great, let's do that. It's funny because right now I have a play that's running in LA that I didn't direct. So someone else directed it and he did a great job, in most ways. But every now and then there's something where I'm like, the character just wouldn't do that. But at some point you have to let things go a little bit. But, it's an interesting role to be in, to have written something and have someone else direct it because they think the character would do that for their own reasons. So you have to sort of give it up.
Yeah. Well, it's nice when you're able to write and direct and have all the control.
Or, well, control's a funny word too, because you never really have all the control. These things are collaborative. So you always have to give up this concept of control, I think, for your own sanity and for everybody else's as well. I always try and keep the idea of like, we're working together, for the best outcome, and just everyone's trying for the best outcome, has the best intention.
How did the actors, Kelly Blatz and Jacqueline Bisset, feel after they filmed the film and then watched it on screen? What was their reaction?
Well, they both loved the movie. They're both very proud of the movie. I mean, the other thing that happened is we're all very close anyway. We became very close before we even shot the movie. Like, I think the three of us really bonded and had a lot in common and just felt good around each other from a very early point. So I think the movie ended up just being a reflection of our own relationship with each other, which was nice.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
And when people walk away from your movie, Loren Rose, what do you want them to sit and, think about afterwards? How do you want them to feel when they go home, or when they're going for dinner after the movie, or, when they're having a walk and talking about it?
I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, I really do enjoy when people remember little lines of dialogue that stick out to them as something meaningful. Like, I always think it's fun at a screening or when I'm talking to people about the movie where they're like, oh, I loved this one line when she said this. Like, I think that's great because that means something really struck. And then I think when you get to the end, what I'd love for people to feel is, after 82 minutes, they've gone through a real emotional journey with these two people. I think there's a lot of entertainment where you can be left feeling a little flat after 82 minutes. And I want this movie to really, people finish it and feel like, wow, God, I really knew these people and went through something with them, and I was really touched by it.
Yeah, I think we underestimate how important it is to be moved, right? To have an experience that's moving to us, that touches our hearts and makes us, think or feel or stop and reflect.
Yeah, and I think, my experience with the movie so far is that it's working that way for a lot of people. And I've been in a lot of theaters, and you can feel it at the end of the movie that people are just sort of still afterwards, which is a great feeling.
That's very gratifying. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the Real Mental podcast today, Russell Brown, and talking with me about this very lovely film, Loren Rose. And I hope that people will go out and see it. Yeah,
it's on Amazon. Have fun. Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you. I appreciate being here.
This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thanks for listening to the Real Mental podcast. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. And while you're at it, why not check out my Ruthless Compassion podcast with over 180 episodes and counting. If you have any ideas for guests for either Real Mental or Ruthless Compassion podcasts, please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com. Happy listening.